We are now joined via Skype by Nicholas Wolpe, who is the CEO of Liliesleaf Trust, one of South Africa's leading heritage sites. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Wolpe. Thank you so very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Thanks very much for having me, Flo. It's a really devastating.
Yeah, we talk about, Andrew Mlangeni, and we've continued to speak of him as the last remaining Rivonia trialist. What does his passing mean for South Africans? I mean, he's lived a long life and a good life. He's contributed so significantly to our country. But it does feel like the finality of something, doesn't it? It does feel like some sort of an end of an era, doesn't it?
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I'm in the process of writing something about that, writing about the fact that with the passing of Dennis Goldberg, that was the end of an era in terms of the Rivonia trialists arrested at Liliesleaf. Now, with the passing of Andrew, it is the end of an era of the Rivonia trialists. We have come to a closure. Yes, there are people still alive who are involved in the Rivonia trial, but in terms of the actual trialist, Andrew was the last surviving trialist. And my concern is, with the passing of Andrew, does this mean now that the Rivonia trial is going to fade? And that epoch of the importance of the Rivonia trial, what it meant and what it signified, is it going to disappear? Because what struck me this morning, I had people here working in the house, and I said, Andrew Mlangeni has passed away, and they just looked at me very blankly and said, who is it?
Yeah, well, that's really quite concerning, isn't it? And I suppose that, this is something that needs to be directed to, the different departments that deal with education in South Africa. The fact that, we need to pay attention more to our history and these struggle stalwarts who are somehow going to be forgotten ultimately. But, I mean, your late father was obviously very close, and your mother, I'm assuming, as well, because she was also involved in the struggle. Was quite close with the trialists, and of course they were caught at your father's property in Liliesleaf. I suppose you would have been quite young at the time, but I do assume that there are a lot of stories that your parents would have shared with you, having been involved in the struggle, about Andrew Mlangeni, the man, the person, and maybe some stories that perhaps we're not very privy to, that perhaps we don't have in the papers, that you won't quickly find, on a Google search. Is there anything that you can perhaps share with us that perhaps was shared with you about Mr. Andrew Mlangeni?
Well, unfortunately, my father was he was a typical struggle activist. He didn't share anything. He kept everything top secret. When we tried to talk to him about that particular period of the Rivonia trial, the lead up to the Rivonia trial as a small child, he would deviate away from the discussion and try and pick something else. But one of the stories that does stand out for me during the Rivonia trial, with regard to Andrew, was when the prosecution were cross-examining Patrick and Kemp, and he could not look at Andrew because both of them had been on military training together in '61. And so in the cross-examination, he laid all the blame Elias Motsoaledi. And at the recess, Andrew went to the lawyers and said, this is not acceptable. I am not prepared for my comrade to take the fall for things that I was involved in and I was responsible for, and I want to raise this when we go back into court. And the lawyers said, no, you can't do that. You just have to accept it. You have to remain quiet. And I think that highlighted the integrity of Andrew, of what we have been hearing so many people say about the quality of Andrew, what he represented, the person that stayed true to the essence of the struggle, stayed to the essence of what the Rivonia trial was about. And his passing really has cut the thread and the link to that unique generation of leaders, showed a high level of integrity, who were true servants of people. And it is our responsibility and the youth of today to pick up the baton of what Andrew symbolized, what he represented, and carry forward his wish. That's one of the ways to ensure that we lose and keep in our minds and in the memories of all the important role that Andrew, as well as the other appointments, played.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that our signal isn't quite great, so we can't catch everything that you're saying. So, and unfortunately, have to keep it a little bit shorter. But in terms of Liliesleaf, I mean, there's this heritage site, of course, and people come there to remember our fallen heroes and so forth. And I suppose now, you would have to kind of pay tribute to Andrew Mlangeni in some way. What are the plans then to pay tribute to the last hero of course, the Rivonia trialists?
Well, unfortunately, Flo, COVID-19 is a big problem. Liliesleaf has shut down because of COVID-19, and we don't know when we're going to reopen. But what I hope to do over the next couple of days is communicate by posting messages on Facebook as to the importance of Andrew, how important he was, the important role that he played, and that we must ensure that people like Andrew and the other Rivonia trialists as a collective, because Andrew didn't see himself as an individual, he saw himself as part of a collective. That was what was so unique about this individual. He didn't identify himself as this lone ranger within the struggle. Like, he identified himself as part of a unique group. And I remember I had to write a speech for him when he was being awarded the key of the City of London. And I remember him phoning me and saying, I have to remove certain things because I've overstayed his role.
Yeah.
And that, I must tone it down. Again, that symbolized the person he was. So I'm going to stick to that, but I'm going to make sure that the message of who this great leader was, he signified and articulated, is put out there and not lost.
Yeah. And what's the duty, I mean, just in closing, in terms of some of us, as young as we are, perhaps that we should pass on to those younger than us who, as you say, might not know, our heroes. And, of course, there is that fear of forgetting our history. What's the duty and what are we supposed to do in terms of keeping, these heroes of ours really alive in the minds of young South Africans,
Well, I think it's a combination of factors, ensuring that we have a proper educational system that takes history as a center, as the core, to ensure that we educate our people, that sites like Liliesleaf educate, that Robben Island educate, that we use these platforms to educate. Because the speech by Abraham Lincoln, I think, summed it up in many respects when he said, our responsibility now is to ensure that we carry the back of those that gave of their lives on this battlefield, to ensure that we have a free America for all people. I'm just paraphrasing it. And that is part of the responsibility now. We must ensure that the young, the living, pick up that baton and carry that message on and forward and upwards, because the struggle has yet to be accomplished. As Nelson said, it is a long journey to freedom, and that journey has yet not been accomplished. So we have to ensure that we do what is necessary to keep the message of what people like Andrew wanted to articulate, what he stood for, alive, and we carry it forward. And that can only be accomplished if we work together as a collective. Universities, schools, the historical site of that ilk.
All right, Nicholas Wolpe, thank you very much for speaking to us here on SA Today. That's CEO of Liliesleaf, Nicholas Wolpe. Thank you very much, sir.